I've been telling you guys for a long time that we're eventually going to start doing some species spotlight style type videos, and I thought, why don't we start off with one of the most mistreated fish in the hobby, the Oscar. So a couple little things I want to talk about before we begin this species breakdown, or how to keep Oscar fish, or just some general information to elaborate on. So you guys know this guy's name is Captain Hook. If you look, when he was younger, it looks like he's taken some damage. It's gone into the flesh, and it's kind of healed that way, giving the appearance of a little hook on the end of that tail fin, or caudal fin is what it's known as. And because his name is Hook, Captain Hook, I got him a pirate ship. This one right here, actually, it was pretty hilarious to give him his own little pirate ship, and of course, while I was at the store, I came across a Sunshine Pleco, which is now in the discus tank in the back there. You see, when I had the ship in there, the Pleco, for the most part, hid behind it, and Hook would not stop beating it up. He got a few little scratches on him, if you can see, right behind his gill plate, and a few on his nose there, and maybe a few other little places. But that was just from relentlessly trying to get that Pleco. I gave them enough time to get along, but it just wouldn't happen. So I had to remove the ship to get the Pleco, took the Pleco, put it in the discus tank where she's nice and happy, and Hook is now on his own. The ship is still out because obviously I want him to heal before we move any further or putting anything back in the tank. So a couple little things I'd like to talk about with Oscars and why they are one of the most abused fish in the hobby. And that's kind of the reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place, was just to bring a little bit more awareness and bring caution to people that are interested in keeping Oscars. You see, the Oscar gets big fast, growing to about 10 to 12 inches, or sometimes anywhere between 8 and 12 inches within the first year, depending on diet, tank size, and water quality. Because of this, people get these tiny little water puppies that are adorable little Oscars, and they grow into these big, boisterous fish, eventually bringing them back to the pet store, or in some cases, releasing them into the wild where they are not endemic to. Which, when you release a predator like this into an area that it's not natural to, can wreak havoc on that ecosystem. These guys are from the Amazon, a lot of distribution in the Amazon. They are not from waterways in Florida, for example, or other tropical warm areas that these are being caught a lot in. Those Oscars are in those locations because hobbyists like us, the irresponsible ones, are releasing them back into the waterways. If you cannot provide for this fish for the next 10 to even 20 years, then you probably shouldn't get one in the first place. Astronautus ocellatus, the Oscar fish, is a cichlid from South America, being one of the most popular cichlids on the planet, not in terms of quantity, but in terms of recognizability. When you get into the aquarium hobby, a lot of people hear about the Oscar fish, probably due to its personality and being very personable fish, always greeting its master. Not necessarily highly active fish, while some are. They do have big personalities. For example, as soon as I shine the camera and lights on it, we got Hook here sucking and trying to lay down at the bottom of the tank, which is not uncommon for an Oscar to do so. Fun fact, before my channel, maybe about 12 years ago, I kept Oscar fish exclusively, meaning I only had Oscars. In fact, I had 6 individual Oscars in 6 individual tanks. I was that into them. A lot of the times in my hobby, I go through these phases where I get so into a certain type of fish, it's the only thing I want to keep. And Oscars, at one point, were that fish for me. When I got all of them, they were all about this size, and within a year, they were all about Hook size, which is about 10 inches long. The Oscar maxes out, typically in the home aquarium, anywhere between 10 to 14 inches long, getting to 8 to 10 inches within that first year typically. Growing much slowly and much more slower over the next 5 to 6 years, maybe putting on an inch every year. Because they're not only growing in length, they get pretty tall and thick and fat as well. Let's talk about the tank setup and what they kind of need before we move any further. First and foremost, these guys are one of the messiest eaters. They have gill plates in the backs of their throats where they grind up the food, so you'll always see them. If you feed them a soft pellet, you'll see a lot of it coming out of their gill plates. They're just an incredibly messy feeder. Because of that, you're going to need to do a tremendous amount of water changes and have ample filtration. For example, I would house an Oscar in the smallest tank I would do would probably be about 75 gallons, which is 4 feet long, a 1.5 feet wide, and about, I believe it's about 21 inches tall. I'd most likely have a pair of large hang on the back filters or a large canister or maybe a pair of canisters. But a lot of times you don't necessarily need any more wave making devices. In these aquariums and the way my rackings are set up is that they're all designed to have the equal amount of circulation and flow through them. Because this Ecotech wave maker is controllable though, I can turn it down to be more specific for each individual fish, because Oscars don't like a tremendous amount of flow. They come from slow moving waters. Hook knows I'm talking about him because he's coming up and checking me out here. Big tank, big water changes, big filtration. Pretty common when it gets into big fish. When it comes to decorations, a lot of the times less is more with Oscars. First and foremost, I've already showed you at the beginning of the video, decorations in a big fish tank, which is a big tank with big fish, a lot of the times they're just going to get hurt on those decorations. So you do want to make sure that they do have soft edges. Perhaps if you weren't going to do a themed tank like this, maybe you would have some softer wood in it, but you do not necessarily need a lot. Oscars do enjoy a lot of open swimming space, but again, based on their personalities, they like to kind of chill out and lay down and suck. When you do a water change, it's not uncommon for the Oscar to lay down in the corner. Now he's upset at me. That's also not uncommon for them to flare their gills and bite the glass, which is an indication of how tank mates are going to go with these fish as well. Rule of thumb, don't put anything in the tank that could fit in the Oscar's mouth. He'll eat it. Second thing, you kind of want to pick fish that can kind of take a beating, that are pretty robust and are not necessarily going to go after the Oscar either. Oscars can get along with a lot of fish, but because they're such a personable fish and they're so personality rich that it really depends Oscar to Oscar. You almost have to test it with fish to see what's going to work. However, I feel you get the most out of your Oscar by keeping a species only tank, whether you have one or perhaps you have up to 6 and say 180 gallon or bigger. But the Oscar is a pretty easy fish to keep. I like to call them the dumpsters of the aquarium world. These guys will eat almost anything that you offer, still needing a varied diet consisting of vegetable as well as protein based. But a lot of people enjoy feeding them feeder fish, like goldfish, for example. In fact, that's one of the most popularized foods for Oscars. But we've talked about this before in the past in several videos, how unhealthy that can be long-term for any fish to feed goldfish. The interesting part about the Oscar fish is that, wow, there's a few variants of it. The wild type, or the original looking tiger Oscar, well, the tiger Oscar is more of a selectively bred strain, concentrating on having more reds in it, but the wild type Oscar is a simply beautiful, almost camouflage looking fish where it has red, some mostly green and brown and black patches, and it truly looks like a camouflaged animal. However, getting into the tigers, you can highlight on the reds, or you can go with a red Oscar like this. There's blood Oscars, there's albino Oscars, there's albino tigers, there's Latinos. Just a variety of Oscars to choose from in terms of what you think you'll be most attracted to in coloration. My preference has always been the reds. I just find them absolutely beautiful depending on the lights. Now, I'm keeping this guy under lights that are rated 5,000 kelvins, which is the color temperature of the light, focusing more on the yellows, greens, and reds, or daylight. The Oscar overall is an easy fish to keep. However, they are prone to hole in the head disease. Being a large fish, one of the benefits of having large fish is you can observe all its features from far away, or even close up. You can truly get a look at its anatomy on the outside. But they have large sensory pits covering the nape of their head. Now, there's a number of factors that will contribute to hole in the head. Most believe it will be water quality. Sometimes it can come down to temperature and diet. But ultimately, that is probably the most popular disease that plagues Oscars. But it can be curbed by ensuring that you have great water quality and a varied diet. Water temperature, these guys can survive at a variable water temperatures, anything down from 20 degrees Celsius all the way up to something like 28. I keep my fish at 25. If you guys aren't watching this, you'll also notice, I don't know if you can see this good on the camera or not, but he is literally changing color, quality, and a varied diet. Water temperature, these guys can survive at a variable water temperatures, anything down from 20 degrees Celsius all the way up to something like 28. I keep my fish at So if you look at the nape of his head, a moment ago that was just white. Like literally seconds ago. I grabbed the camera to see what color he was going to change. Here he goes again. Hopefully it'll pick it up. But isn't that absolutely insane? Here he goes. See him changing? This is definitely a sign of some sort of a mood that he's in, whether he's stressed out, whether he's angry, something along those lines. It doesn't help that this is blazing in front of him and he's not used to this, so this is kind of new for him. I'm glad we caught this on camera though, because I always find it absolutely fascinating how fast the Oscar can change their color. Absolutely insane. When he looks his best though, he'll be black and red. Absolutely beautiful. If you're not following me on Instagram, you'll see that there's videos and pictures of him on there. Very excited to eat at all times, and you kind of got to be careful. These guys will jump, they will bite your hands. It's not like a flower horn where you can pet them. I mean, some Oscars can be trained to be more friendly with you. Hook's not one of them. Now again, these guys do great in a wide variety of water parameters. The temperature, I like to keep it pretty warm, anywhere from 25 to 26, which isn't that warm, but is definitely where I find them to be the happiest, most active, and feeding properly, not overeating. Water quality is not getting that bad. They're not gasping at the surface, anything along those lines. And when it comes to tank-raised Oscars, pH anything between 6.5 to like up to 8 pH is fine, acidic as well as alkaline. Basically, whatever comes out of your tap is going to be more than fine for these guys as long as you provide consistent measurements. Yeah, such a personable little fish. This is a tank and a fish that you could sit in front of and you guys will watch each other for as long as you want. I just realized that this is the lonely man's fish. If you don't have any friends, get an Oscar. Also get an Oscar if you've got a 75-gallon aquarium, you don't mind little to no aquascape and the Oscar continuously destroying it. You don't mind over-filtering the tank and doing plenty of water changes, but if you can't do that, don't get an Oscar because these guys are going to go from 0 to 100 real quick. Oh, and they live for like 10 to 20 years, so big commitment. I'm going to go ahead and be completely honest here and tell you guys that one of my favorite features of the Oscar is not only its very powerful look, but there's so many features I like about it. It's its eyes. I really like its eyes. They're like googly eyes. They just kind of like, almost like a chameleon's. Absolutely hilarious. Anyways, guys, if you've enjoyed that how to care for Oscars, I know it was pretty vague. I did just wing it. If you have further information or I forgot something, please leave it in the comment section below. I've always said it. The comment section is the second part of the video. That's where you guys come in. If you do enjoy this video, you want to see more of them, make sure you let me know in the comment section below. Give this video a thumbs up. And if you enjoy these videos, you want to see more, you don't want to miss any of them, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of them.